Welcome. Welcome to today's National Archives Know Your Records program. We are broadcasting live from the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. and over YouTube. My name is Andrea Bassing-Matney and I welcome you. We're so pleased to have you here joining us today. Before we begin, I have a few tips for you on how to participate in today's program. For those of you who are here on site, we are accepting questions. We ask that you hold on to them until the very end of the program and use the microphones in the aisles. That way we can pick you up on the microphone. For those of you who are watching online, during the live broadcast, you can also ask questions. You'll do that by, on this YouTube page, log into the chat section and type in your questions, and I will respond to them and ask those questions of the presenters at the very end of the program. Also on this webpage, you will find several hot links. One will take you to the presentation slides, another will take you to the handout, and the third will take you to live captioning. So for today's program, it is entitled Records for Veterans, Gathering Evidence for Claims and Benefits. Our three presenters currently work at the National Archives at College Park and have extensive experience in helping patrons seeking veterans documentation in support of a benefit or claim. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenters, Susan Gillette, Michelle Brown, and Deborah Poe.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Brown. It's good to be here with you today. As mentioned, this is a presentation for veterans and gathering evidence needed for claims. So every day at the National Archives, we work with citizens who need access to records for a variety of reasons. Some patrons research records of government agencies for the purpose of writing scholarly papers and books. Others use documents in the archives to investigate genealogical histories. But many of our patrons are veterans and families of veterans who are seeking documentation in support of evidence or in support of benefits for service-connected claims. As of 2014, the VA estimates that there are 22 million military veterans in the U.S. population. If you add their figures on veterans to the active personnel numbers calculated by the Defense Manpower Data Center, 7.3% of all living Americans have served in the military, a language that led to the development of COBOL. Jimi Hendrix was a famous American rock guitarist, singer, and songwriter popular in the 20th century. He's still celebrated today for his influential style. In 1961, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and trained as a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne Division. He was granted an honorable discharge the following year. Steve McQueen was an iconic actor who received the Academy Award nomination for his role in The Sand Pebbles. In 1947, McQueen joined the United States Marine Corps and was promoted to private first class and assigned to an armored unit. McQueen served until 1950 when he was honorably discharged. So it's not just famous people that have been in the military. My grandfather, my stepfather, my uncle, my cousins, so many people I know have been in the military, including my two fellow presenters here today. So when were you in the military? If you served sometime during the 20th century, your official military personnel file is probably available at the National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis. Your personnel file contains much of the documentation you need for claims, but there are other types of records available that you may have not considered. This presentation is designed to provide veterans and their families with an awareness concerning the diversity of records available. So what kind of documents or records will help with the benefits and claims process? There's, of course, the official military personnel file. There's various types of unit records, as well as records created by or in the custody of the Veterans Administration. With regard to unit records, the geographic location of the unit may help identify an area in which Agent Orange was sprayed. We'll discuss that later in this presentation. The official military personnel file is the primary administrative record containing information about the veteran's service history, such as the date and type of enlistment or appointment, duty stations and assignments, training, qualifications, performance, awards and decorations, military actions, disciplinary actions, insurance, emergency data, administrative remarks, as well as the type of separation, including release from active duty, discharge, or retirements. The report of separation is generally issued when a service member performs active duty or at least 90 days of active duty training. The report of separation contains information normally needed to verify military service for benefits, retirements, employment, and memberships in veterans organizations. Information shown on the report of separation can include the date and place of entry into service, home address at the time of entry, date and place for release from active duty, home address after separation, last duty assignment, military job specialty, military education, decorations and medals, total creditable service, foreign service, and separation information such as the character of service, the authority and reason for separation, and the re-enlistment eligibility code. The report of separation form issued in most years is the DD-214. DD-214s can look different depending on the edition. If you look at the one pictured here, that's generally a Vietnam-era edition of the form. Reserve service less than 90 continuous days is documented in the retirement point record, including National Guard service. National Guard members are also issued an NGB Form 22, Report of Separation and Record of Service. So how can you get a copy of your official military personnel file? Most personnel records from the 20th century are stored at the National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis, which is a repository of the National Archive. If you take a look at the dates that the records go through, Navy is available through 1994 at the National Personnel Record Center, and the latest available records are Coast Guard, which are available through September 2006. For persons discharged after that date, you'll want to consult the standard Form 180. And the standard Form 180 is pictured here on the right. And you can also request online. Veterans and their relatives who qualify as next of kin may request their OMPF online via eVetRex, and the address is pictured on the left. However, when you use this method, be warned that there's a signature page generated at the end of the application that you have to submit either by fax or mail. So all requests, whether they're written out by hand or if they're submitted online, have to include a certain amount of information. All requests should include identity information of the veteran, such as the full name, service number, branch of service, and the date served. It should also include the veteran's authorization and the mailing address where the documentation should be sent. In addition to military personnel files, some in- and outpatient records are available at St. Louis. In addition to being available at St. Louis, they could also be on file with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Many OMPFs contain both personnel and former active duty personnel health records, but the service branches discontinued retiring the health portion to NPRC in the late 90s. In 1992, the Army began retiring most of its former members' health records to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and then over the next 6 years, the other services followed suit. So veterans who plan to file a claim for medical benefits with the Department of Veterans Affairs do not need to request a copy of their health record from NPRC or the VA center holding the file. After a claim is filed, the VA will obtain the original health record from NPRC or the VA storage facility as applicable. NPRC works actively to respond to each request in a timely manner. The center receives approximately 4,000 to 5,000 requests per day. Response times can vary depending on the complexity of each request, the availability of records, and the overall workload. In general, NPRC responds to requests for separation documents within 10 days about 92% of the time. However, requests that involve extensive reconstruction efforts due to the infamous 1973 fire or older records that require extensive research, it could take as much as 6 months to complete a case. NPRC asks individuals not to send a follow-up request before 90 days have elapsed, as it could cause further delay. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to my colleague Susan Gillette, who is a Navy veteran and works with Navy Marine Corps records at the National Archives Textual Research Room in College Park. Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Now that we've looked at individual personnel and medical files, we're going to talk about unit records. These types of records mainly document a unit's personnel and its major activities. The military archivists at Archives 2 handle many requests for these types of records. In this presentation, I'm going to talk a lot about how to contact us at the archives, but also how to contact other entities we may have to refer you to. Don't worry if you don't have time to write this down from the slide or by listening to me. We have a handout of all of these addresses and contact information that you can pick up here before you leave and will also be accessible on YouTube. Unit records are useful for showing that a unit participated in combat or may have served in a geographic location where other Department of Defense records show that Agent Orange was used. They may also document an accident or major incident. We are going to discuss what types of unit records NARA holds for each of the 5 military branches and discuss when we have to refer you to another government entity to obtain what you need. Oops. Okay. Before you prepare your claim, think about what you need to demonstrate. Do you need to show your presence on a ship or in a unit? Or do you need to document the type of activities in which the unit engaged? Or do you need to do both? When searching for unit records, the most crucial information you need is the veteran's unit hierarchy. The terminology varies by service. These are just a few examples on this slide of command hierarchies. The veteran's official military personnel file may disclose the command hierarchy of his unit. It's important to remember that structures can change over time. This is particularly true for the Army. Let's take a look at documenting your presence in a unit or on a ship. The Army has what are called unit rosters. Army and Air Force also use morning reports. The Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard have muster rolls. The Navy also uses personnel diaries, and the U.S. Marine Corps has unit diaries. This slide shows you the different names given by each service to records that document presence. First, we'll look at Army unit rosters and Army and Air Force morning reports. This slide gives you the URL for the National Archives at St. Louis webpage, pictured here, that provides specific information on how to request morning reports and unit rosters. An Army unit roster shows the name, service number, and rank and/or occupational specialty of the member attached to a unit. The Army and Air Force morning reports can document who was present each day and who might be listed as sick or wounded. Access procedures for these records depend on what years you need. The Army unit rosters and morning reports for 1944 to 1946, unfortunately, were disposed of by the Army. Other Army morning reports and unit rosters dated 1912 to 1959, and all Air Force morning reports are public records. The National Archives at St. Louis does not accept written requests for these records. You must either visit in person or employ an independent researcher, and you can find a list of independent researchers on our website. Army morning reports and unit rosters dated 1960 to 1974 are subject to limitations of the Privacy Act. You may submit a written request for copies of the records via postal mail or fax. In your request, give the exact unit of assignment, for example, Company A, 1st Battalion, 116th Infantry Regiment, a description of the action, I was wounded and sent to a hospital, and an approximate date. Without this type of information, the National Personnel Records Center may not be able to perform a search. Let's look at Navy muster rolls and personnel diaries. Navy muster rolls are quarterly reports, which means they're done on March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, and December 31st. They list the naval personnel attached to a ship, station, or other activity. At the top of a muster roll, you will see the name of the ship, station, or activity, the ship name and hull number, and the ship or station activity code. You will also see the date of the muster roll. The body of the muster roll will show the name of the service member, their rank or rating, service number, the date they reported for duty or on board the ship, and the date of enlistment. Personnel diaries are different from muster rolls in that they are compiled each month and consist of daily entries. They are the Navy's equivalent of the Army morning reports. They record significant status changes, including reporting or transferring to or from an activity, being promoted or demoted, members departing or returning from periods of leave or temporary additional duty. They should note if someone is medically evacuated from a ship. It is possible to find a late entry in a diary. This happens when the entry postdates the date of the change of status or duty. So although your research might be focused on a certain month, it is wise to look beyond that month to see if there are any late entries for the service member you are looking for. A personnel diary can sometimes document the identity of another service unit serving with the ship or being transported by it. This can happen, for example, in the case of a Marine Corps unit, and you need that unit's name in order to find their command chronology, because the command chronology may document an incident involving that unit on the ship. It's also important to note what muster rolls and personnel diaries do not include. Muster rolls are not daily lists of naval personnel attached to a ship, station, or other activity, nor will they tell you the daily activities of a sailor during their service. Muster rolls and personnel diaries do not contain current addresses of former naval personnel or their survivors. How do you access muster rolls and personnel diaries? How and where you access Navy muster rolls or personnel diaries depends on the time period you're looking for. For pre-1938 muster rolls or personnel diaries, you need to contact the National Archives building, known as Archives 1 in downtown Washington, D.C. The address is on this slide and also in the handout. To find Navy muster rolls or personnel diaries for 1938 through 1949, these have been digitized in partnership with Ancestry.com. You can find them at fold3.com, the website of Ancestry's subsidiary. These are the only reference copies that will be made available to researchers. If you are at the National Archives in the Washington, D.C. area, either Archives 1 or Archives 2, or one of our regional facilities or Presidential Library, you can link to fold3.com at no charge from one of our public access computers, and you can print or download copies for about 40 cents a page. Navy muster rolls or personnel diaries from 1950 to 1970 are accessible at Archives 2 and can be reproduced on DVD or paper. It is possible to purchase a duplicate reel of microfilm for about $125. If you visit in person, you can scan pages from the microfilm to a USB on our new microfilm scanners. For muster rolls or personnel diaries after 1971, the National Archives at College Park holds Navy muster rolls through 1980, Navy officer muster rolls through 1980, and Navy enlisted muster rolls through 2003. For enlisted personnel after 2003 and officers after 1980, you must contact the Navy Personnel Command in Millington, Tennessee. In 1971, all the armed forces started to use the Social Security number as a service number. Because of privacy restrictions, a request must be submitted on a muster roll FOIA request form to the Special Access section of NARA's FOIA office. This office will remove Social Security numbers before providing copies. If a veteran is seeking their own name entry or with his or her Social Security number, their Social Security number will be removed along with third-party Social Security numbers unless the veteran submits a Department of Justice form called Certification of Identity. You may submit your request via email to the Special Access Office at Archives 2, and we've put their email address both on the form and in this slide and in the handout. For Navy muster rolls and personnel diaries after 2003, you must contact the Navy Personnel Command in Millington, Tennessee. Their address is on this slide and also in the handout. Now let's take a look at Marine Corps muster rolls and personnel diaries. The U.S. Marine Corps muster rolls from 1798 to 1958 have been digitized and made available online by our partner Ancestry.com for a fee. For 1959 through 1980, these records are available at Archives 2 in College Park, Maryland. For muster rolls and unit diaries after 1980, contact the Records Service section at Marine Corps Headquarters at Quantico in Quantico, Virginia. The address is on this slide and in the handout. Again, muster rolls and diaries from 1971 onward use Social Security numbers as personal identifiers. You must make your request for these that cover 1971 through 1980 to the Archives 2 FOIA office as described for Navy muster rolls. For records dated after 1980, your FOIA request must be submitted to the Marine Corps Records Service section previously mentioned at Quantico. Let's turn to the Coast Guard. Before 1949, the Coast Guard also called their list of personnel muster rolls. From 1949 onwards, they are now called personnel diaries. The National Archives in downtown Washington, D.C. holds the Coast Guard muster rolls through 1948. From 1949 on, the personnel diaries are now classified as non-permanent records by the Coast Guard. These records are only retained for 50 years. In time of war, the Coast Guard comes under the control of the U.S. Navy. Coast Guard members may serve on Navy ships, and Coast Guard ships may be assigned to naval commands. The Coast Guard members forming part of a crew of a naval vessel will show up in the Navy ship's muster rolls and personnel diaries. This is true for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. As mentioned earlier, from 1971 on, if Social Security numbers are present in the records, they must be requested by means of a FOIA request to the Coast Guard Personnel Service Center in Washington, D.C. Now that we've discussed records that show your presence in a unit, we're going to turn to records that document activities of the unit. The names given this type of unit record vary by service and even by war. Knowing these differences can help the veteran find what he or she is looking for. Let's talk about Army unit records. This slide shows you how titles given to Army unit records vary by war. It helps in your search if you specify the type of report you're looking for. To get to the right report, one also needs as much of the command hierarchy as possible for the unit. As mentioned before, unit structures change over time. At Archives 2 in College Park, we have Army unit operational records covering years 1917 through 1954. After 1954, through about 1975, Archives 2 also has records for Army units that served in Southeast Asia. If you are looking for Vietnam records, remember that the overall Joint Command was Military Assistance Command Vietnam, or MACV for short. For Army units that did not serve in Southeast Asia, some of their operational records for years 1955 and later are found at Archives 2 in record groups 338 and 319. These can include awards, unit deployments, change of command, and readiness information that go up to about 1991. We have received in the last 2 years about 105 series of records for Operations Desert Storm and Desert Shield through 1994. However, many series remain restricted because information is still classified or contains personal identification information. However, we do have a form by which a researcher can request a mandatory declassification review or release under FOIA, depending on the applicable option. And you can contact us for a copy of that form or pick one up in person at the archives. Records from the Army that are not yet at NARA may still be in custody of the U.S. Army Records Management and Declassification Agency located in Alexandria, Virginia. For Army records that NARA does not hold, you may find contemporary and historical Army materials at the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center, known as USAHEC, located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This is a picture of the homepage of their website. This slide shows the components within the Army Heritage and Education Center. The center has some unofficial materials, including unit histories, personal papers, diaries, and photographs. Selected official papers are also available. The center also has a helpful chart on their website that shows the different types of official Army records and which institution has custody of them. And we've put that link in the handout. I'm going to talk briefly about World War II Air Force unit records that we hold at NARA. We have Army Air Force World War II unit records. Two major series are Combat Mission Reports and Missing Aircrew Reports, known by their acronym MACRS or MACRAS. NARA holds few Army Air Force records after 1946. The Air Force became a separate branch in 1947. The combat mission reports for World War II pertain to specific targets, and reports are arranged by unit. The name of the group or squadron and a date of interest are necessary before a search can be conducted. If you know the MACRA number for the missing aircrew report, you may order the report from our microfilm catalog. If you do not know the MACRA number, we may be able to find it for you if you can give us the date of loss, the tail number of the aircraft, and the name of the crew member. Ancestry.com has digitized the MACRAs. This database is searchable by crew member name. You can access the database free of charge at any of our public access computers at any of our research rooms. For Air Force records that NARA does not hold, we refer you to the Air Force Historical Research Agency, known as AFHRA or AFRA, located at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. They hold unit histories and supporting documents of the Army Air Force for World War II and Air Force units post-World War II. You may call them at area code 334-953-2395. We've put their mailing address and website address in the handout. The Air Force History Program began in 1942, and this research agency has remarkably complete coverage of Air Force activities. The Air Force Historical Research Agency assigns each document in its archive an 8-digit IRIS number, known as IRIS. There is an Air Force History Index you can use to look up a document's IRIS number. This has been compiled and made available online by a private entity called Air Force History Index. And we've given you the web address on this slide and in the handout. Once you have the IRIS number for a document, the research agency at Maxwell can determine if the document's classified. If you need to request a classified document, you must file a Freedom of Information Act request with the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. And we've put their contact information in the handout. The same index is available on microfilm at the Air Force History Studies Office at Bolling Air Force Base here in Washington, D.C. Now we'll take a look at Navy unit records. At Archives 2 in College Park, two of the most heavily used groups of Navy records are the ship deck logs and the World War II action reports and war diaries. This slide on the right shows the cover page of a deck log. They are kept by month, and each month can average about 65 pages. Their format and design has changed over the decades. A deck log is a brief record of the daily administrative activities of a ship. It includes journal-style entries and ship's administrative activities, location and course of travel, disciplinary procedures, and any unusual events. The logs sometimes include information related to operational activities, although the level of content and detail can vary widely. It is important to note what a deck log does not include. They do not describe a ship's mission in detail, nor do they mention all events occurring in or around the ship. For the period 1941 through 1956, deck logs usually included monthly rosters of officers. Beginning in March 1957, officer rosters are no longer included in the deck logs. From 1957 onwards, officers' rosters are included in the ship's muster rolls and personnel diaries, along with the enlisted muster rolls and personnel diaries. Only the deck logs of major combatant and support ships are considered permanent records under the Department of Navy record management regulations. How do you access Navy deck logs? If you find deck logs at the National Archives that have pages marked Special Operations and there are no entries, no further information is available. These usually indicate a classified mission where records were not retained. If you are using deck logs at one of our facilities and you find a notice in the box that says some deck logs have been withheld or are under review, you may submit a deck log review form to the FOIA office at Archives 2 to request access. We have included this form on site with the handout, and they will also be available with the slides. Many deck logs have been digitized and are available via the National Archives catalog. We put the link on the slide, and the link takes you to a series titled Logbooks of the U.S. Navy Ships and Stations, 1941 to 1978. On the first page that is displayed when you click on this link, you need to look in the middle of the page for a button that says Search within this series. Once you click on that, you will see each month of a deck log as one digital file, and you can identify them by the digital thumbnail picture similar to the one I showed you earlier on the slide. If you are interested in requesting non-digitized deck logs for the period 1941 through 1983, please contact Archives 2 reference at the email address we've provided on the slide and in the handout. In your request, it's important to give us the name of the ship, the hull number if you know it, the dates of interest, and the nature of your inquiry. For example, are you looking for a particular type of incident, or are you looking for a particular ship location? I'd like to tell you about two real-life examples where access to deck logs or other Navy records have helped veterans establish the basis for their claims. one VA regional office asked my help in determining whether a World War II veteran and his ship had actually been in Nagasaki in 1946, shortly after the atomic bomb was detonated. They gave me a 60-day period to search, but I found that in that 60-day period, there was no entry for Nagasaki. So I looked before that, and sure enough, I found in January 1946, his ship had gone back and forth into Nagasaki 10 times delivering supplies. And this enabled him to establish that he had probably been exposed to radiation. In another case, documented by ProPublica and the Pilot newspaper in Virginia, Navy veteran John Kirkwood, who served on the USS Mount McKinley, looked for his deck logs but found that they were missing, and neither NARA or the Navy could find them. But in his garage, he found a cruise book, which is like a yearbook that crew members will put together to document a cruise they've made. And this cruise book helped him establish his presence in Vietnam because it talked about the crew members going ashore. For World War II World War II Navy records, two series that are heavily used are the action reports and war diaries from 1941 to 1946. Action reports are narrative or form reports of incidents of direct combat with enemy forces during World War II. They include Army or Coast Guard ships under Navy control during the war. Reports of lower level units can also be attached to reports of parent organizations. Most war diaries provide day-to-day record of operational activities. For the Marine Corps, these were submitted mainly by aviation units such as fighter squadrons. For Navy records that NARA does not hold, you may have to contact the Naval History and Heritage Command at the Washington Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. This is a picture of their homepage. One type of report they hold that can sometimes be useful is called a Command Operation Report, or COR. These are submitted annually by aviation squadrons or ships and cover the operational administrative activities of the command for each calendar year. They are filed in time of peace. During wartime, they are called war diaries. The NHHC also holds deck logs that are less than 30 years old. They also have certain digital collections, guides and finding aids, and various resources for veterans. And I mentioned the veteran who found his cruise book. NHHC receives donations from Navy veterans of cruise books. So if you find you don't have a copy of your cruise book, check with this center to see if someone else from your ship donated one. And remember that action reports for Coast Guard units that served with naval units in Vietnam are held at the Naval History and Heritage Command. Let's turn to Marine Corps unit records. Archives 2 holds Marine Corps operational unit records from 1941 to 1976. We also hold unit and operational records for some Marine commands from 1953 to 1993. There are also a few records on specific topics up to 1983. This slide shows you how the type of record can vary by war. When looking for Marine Corps unit or operational records, it helps to have the veteran's command hierarchy. For example, it's not enough to give the lowest unit, such as the Marine Corps company, nor is it sufficient to say the name of just the regiment, say 4th Regiment. Command histories, known as command chronologies, are retained at the divisional and regimental level. There are also command chronologies for Marine detachments attached to Navy ships. The lower level unit records, such as company records, are usually not retained as permanent records. However, it helps to know the company because the regimental chronology will mention the companies attached to it during the reporting period. It may show if the veteran was attached to another regiment or division other than their home regiment or division. This often happened in Vietnam. As a rule of thumb, the higher you go in the hierarchy, the more general the chronology. A regimental command chronology will be more detailed than a divisional command chronology. For Marine records that NARA does not hold, you need to contact the U.S. Marine Corps History Division, located at the Marine Corps Base in Quantico, Virginia. Its primary task is to research and write the Marine Corps' official history. It also provides reference and research assistance, preserves personal experiences and observations through oral history interviews, and deploys field historians to record history in the making. The Marine Corps History Division has an archives branch known as the Gray Research Center. It preserves and provides access to primary source documentation pertaining to the history of the Marine Corps. Materials range in date from 1773 to the present and include such things as collections of personal papers of Marines of all ranks, U.S. Marine Corps command chronologies, Marine Corps University materials, selected Marine Corps records, documents, and publications, and also maps and drawings. Currently, the archive's holdings are not accessible online. Requests for information about the branch and its holdings can be submitted by email, phone, letter, or in person. However, email is preferred. We have their contact information here on the slide and also in the handout. Texas Tech University at College Station in Texas has also created a virtual Vietnam archive that hosts the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam online database. This database includes records that were digitized by the Gray Research Center. It includes operation reports, commanders' combat readiness reports, command chronologies, and after-action reports. These records only go through 1975. For command chronologies after that date, it's necessary to contact the Marine Corps History Division. Look in this database before you contact Archives 2 for Vietnam command chronologies, because what you need is probably available in this database, and we have put their website address on the slide and in the handout. Last but not least, let's talk about the U.S. Coast Guard. Most people know that the U.S. Coast Guard has ships, and they think of them mainly in terms of search and rescue missions. The U.S. Coast Guard ship deck logs dated 1797 through 1972 are available at Archives 1 reference section at the National Archives in downtown Washington, D.C. There are some early deck logs from the 18th century that are held in regional archives, but it's best to check with the staff at Archives 1 and they can point you to the right facility. After 1972, these logs are now held by the Coast Guard District that covers the ship's home port. They are retired after 20 years to NARA's regional field archives nearest to the ship's home port. A list of NARA's field archives is on our website, www.archives.gov. If you need to verify a ship's home port, because they can change, contact Coast Guard Headquarters at 202-475-5001. Archives 1 in downtown Washington also holds search and rescue case files for the years 1965 to 1985. For case files after 1985, you must contact Coast Guard Headquarters in Washington, D.C., and their address is in the handout. Starting in 2012, the Coast Guard only retains as permanent what they consider historically significant search and rescue case files. All others are disposed of after 15 years. In 2003, they started entering these files into a digital database known as MISLE, or M-I-S-L-E. In addition to search and rescue, the Coast Guard also has law enforcement and safety functions. Operational records for these functions were kept from 1981 to 2001 in an electronic database known as the Marine Safety Information System, or MISIS, M-S-I-S. In 2002, The MISSIS system was integrated into a new database called the Marine Information for Safety and Law Enforcement, or MISSIL, as previously mentioned. Both series can include information about marine accidents, pollution incidents, and injuries and deaths. The Electronic Records Unit at Archives 2 manages requests for both of these series. Because the records contain a great deal of personal identification information, any request has to be made under the Freedom of Information Act. For records on these subjects that date after 2006, contact Coast Guard headquarters. For Coast Guard records not at NARA and not held by Coast Guard headquarters or districts, you may need to turn to the Coast Guard Historian's Office. Its collections include documents, official publications and manuals, photographs, oral histories, memoirs, and artifacts, among other things. The material complements and sometimes duplicates the holdings at the National Archives. The contact information for this office is on the slide and also in the handout. Now that we've covered information that documents your presence in a unit or the activities of your unit, we'd like to take a moment to address records that are sometimes requested for specific circumstances. Veterans occasionally request documents concerning military accidents or incidents that may be relevant to claims concerning post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, or Agent Orange. The Air Force, maintains aircraft accident or incident reports considered to have significant research value. These reports, created on or after January 1956, may be requested from the Air Force Safety Agency at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. Their address is on this slide and in the handout. The Army maintains preliminary reports of aviation mishaps, and you can request these from the U.S. Army Safety Center in Fort Rucker, Alabama. The Army also maintains individual accident case report files for accidents incident to Army operations. These include reports of injuries to any person involved and include things like motor vehicle accidents. These records are retained at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis for 6 years and then destroyed. Let's talk about Navy and Marine Corps accident reports. NARA at Archives 1 holds what are called casualty ship folders for damaged or lost ships. These may contain names and service numbers of survivors and/or casualties. Navy aircraft accident reports can be found at both Archives 1 and Archives 2. They are found in Record Group 72, Records of the Bureau of Aeronautics, in a series entitled General and Confidential Correspondence. A researcher needs to use the appropriate Navy filing manual to locate the correct box. Navy archivists can assist you with this. After 1950 and until 1970, aviation accident reports are found at the Naval History and Heritage Command at the Washington Navy Yard. After 1970, aviation mishap reports that result in damages of $50,000 or more may be obtained from the Naval Safety Center in Norfolk, Virginia. We've put their address on this slide and also in the handout. For Navy motor vehicle accident injury reports, they are available also at the Navy Safety Center in Norfolk, but in a different branch. And that branch is the Occupational Safety, Health, and Support branch. For post-traumatic stress disorder claims, individuals often need proof of service with units that took part in combat or were involved in accidents or other stressful activities. For Agent Orange claims, individuals need to show that they served with a unit in areas where Agent Orange was sprayed. Sometimes individuals need to verify that they were serving on temporary active or temporary additional duty. This is often important in cases of individuals who claim service in Vietnam. Personnel records may help to show unit assignments through assignment orders or other orders, or an officer or enlisted efficiency report. I'd like to take a moment to discuss the role of an office you may have heard of, but may not understand. It's called the Joint Services Records Research Center, known by its acronym as JSRRC. I mention this because in both helping veterans and VA staff, I have encountered a lot of misunderstanding as to its function. The JSRRC only provides direct research report for veterans, research support for the Veterans Administration. Its staff research Army, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard unit records for information that will assist the VA in deciding cases of PTSD, Agent Orange health claims, or other health claims for disability benefits. The VA has identified exposure sites for Agent Orange based on Department of Defense research. The JSRRC has direct communication with all VA regional offices and a full-time VA liaison officer who works with those offices. All requests on behalf of a veteran must come through the VA regional office handling their claim. The veteran needs to provide the VA regional office with his unit name, dates of service in the unit, type of incident, and the geographic area where his unit was serving at the time of the incident. The regional office then passes this information to JSRRC and asks them to search normally a 60-day period of the applicable records. However, the VA can request an additional 60-day search period. Before filing their claim, many veterans seek assistance from NARA in order to have the most accurate information on their unit before they file their claim with the VA regional office so that the VA searches the right 60 or 120-day period. You may have noticed that JSRRC does not do research for one branch of the military service, and that's the Marine Corps. For research assistance for Marine Corps members, that is handled by 2 units at the Marine Corps headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. The first is the Records Service Section for unit diaries, and the other one is the Marine Corps History Division for command chronologies and after-action reports. The VA regional office handling the claim can contact both these offices directly, and copies are normally provided free of charge. We've put both their addresses on the slide and in the handout. An entity called the Defense Technical Information Center, or DTIC, provides the general public with access to the same unclassified information about Agent Orange spray locations that the VA has access to. There are 2 reports that are particularly helpful. The first is called the Herb Tape Report, which you can look up by number on their website, and the number is ADA 160563. This documents helicopter and ground spraying missions. The National Academy of Sciences also created a database for the Department of Defense on what is known as the U.S. Air Force ranch hand spray missions. This report covers aerial spraying from Air Force airplanes. And lastly, I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss casualty reports. The National Archives facility at St. Louis holds casualty files known as Individual Deceased Personnel Files, or RDPFs, for Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps veterans. Army Individual Deceased Personnel Files have not been received yet. These files were created by the military services to document the death of a military member and the related actions associated with disposition of the remains. Secondly, there is a database of Vietnam casualties known as the Kofelt database. It was created by Richard Kofelt, a Korean War veteran who became an attorney in Hays, Kansas. When he became aware that the government had not made public a central source of information regarding servicemen and women who died as a result of service in Vietnam, he started a volunteer effort in 1980 to determine the unit assignment of every Army soldier who died in Vietnam. We've given you the website for the Kofelt database on the slide and in the handout. And thirdly, a user can search, before I get to the third element, I want to mention about the Kofelt database, that in that database you can search by name, unit, location, or home of record. The database also can help living veterans identify the unit they served with. because I have met veterans who cannot remember their unit name, and for some reason their official personnel file is silent or vague. But they can remember a buddy they served with who died. And so we can look that person up and they can find the unit they served with. That then helps them find the unit records that they need. Thirdly, on the NARA website, under Research Our Records option, is a selection Access to Archival Databases, abbreviated AAD. This contains 9 digitized series concerning war casualties, mostly from Korea and Vietnam. These are digital records received from the agencies that created them. One of the series includes the Kofelt database, which Mr. Kofelt donated. The difference between this Kofelt database and the one with its own web address is that the one with its own web address updates. As they get new information, they update it. So if you don't find something in our database, go to the direct web address for the Kofelt database, and you may find the information there. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer questions at the end of the program. Now I would like to turn the podium over to my colleague, Deborah Poe, who will talk to you about questions that veterans and their families frequently ask NARA that concern benefits, awards, and photographs.
Hello, my name is Deborah Poe, United States Army. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon regarding our presentation on records for veterans. I will be talking about how to obtain your certificate of eligibility, which is a COE, information on home loans, refinance, burials, markers, the Presidential Memorial Certificate, replacement of medals, and finally, information on dog tags. A variety of important benefits and services are available to veterans and to their families, survivors, and next of kin from the Department of Veteran Affairs. In addition, many states, counties, and local municipalities offer additional veterans benefits and programs. While the National Archives does not provide these benefits, we can help you obtain copies of military personnel records or other proof of service which you'll need to prove eligibility. In addition to veterans seeking eligibility evidence for benefits, veterans also often request records or other service items as a memento of their military experience. We often field questions related to replacement medals, photographs, and other service memorabilia. The Department of Veteran Affairs administers a variety of benefits and services that provide financial and other forms of assistance to veterans, as well as their dependents and survivors. The agency operates the nation's largest integrated healthcare system with more than 1,700 hospitals, clinics, community living centers, readjustment counseling centers, and other facilities. The VA also operates 131 national cemeteries in the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Burial and memorial benefits are available for eligible service members, veterans, and family members. The Department of Veteran Affairs provides the following benefits to veterans and their families: disability compensation, educational assistance, job training, and home loans. They provide health care for medical treatment at hospitals, clinics, and other care facilities. They also provide burial and memorials. The VA also can assist with information regarding burial benefits, military burials, headstones, markers, medallions, and presidential memorial certificates honoring their deceased loved ones. VA home loans are accepted by private lenders such as banks, credit unions, and mortgage companies. A veteran is eligible for a home loan if they meet the following requirements. The veteran served 181 days, which is 5 months, 4 weeks of active duty. Served 6 years in the Reserve or National Guard. Served 90 days during wartime active duty. If you're the spouse of a service member who was killed in the line of duty, you are also eligible for home loans. Also, there is a interest rate reduction refinance loan that a veteran or their family member can refinance using this particular loan and can refinance their home with an ARM, which is an adjustable rate mortgage, to a fixed mortgage. A certificate of eligibility is not required for this loan, but be aware there may be some type of funding fee. In order to get your certificate of eligibility for a home loan, you need a suitable income, a FICO score of at least 620, and the VA guarantees a portion of the loan, which allows the mortgage broker to have veterans have better terms for purchasing houses. And to obtain your COE, you must have been discharged under conditions other than dishonorable and meet the following service requirements. For World War II, 90 total days. Post-World War II, 181 continuous days. For Korea, 90 total days. Post-Korea, 181 continuous days. For Vietnam, 90 total days. Post-Vietnam, 181 continuous days. 1980 to 1990, 24 continuous months. The Gulf War, 24 continuous months. Current active duty, 90 continuous days. The National Guard and Reserve, 1990 to present, which would be 90 days of active duty. Documents needed to receive your certificate of eligibility would be your DD-214, your report of separation, your DD-256, which is your actual certificate of discharge, your NGB .22 statements for people that were with National Guard or Reserve. These items must be required via a written request, either by writing a letter, filling out an SF-180 through google.com, or using NARA's eVetRex database system through archives.gov. Once your request is filled out, print it out, sign it, state that it is needed for a home loan or refinance, the date needed by, and fax it to 314-801-9195, or you can mail your request to the Military Personnel Record Center, the number 1 Archives Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 63138. The VA also assists for claims for burial benefits. Burial benefits include a grave site in any of the 135 national cemeteries with available space, opening and closing of the grave, perpetual care, a government marker or headstone, burial flag, and a presidential memorial certificate signed by the current president at no cost to the family. Cremated remains in urns can be buried in national cemeteries in the same manner and with the same honors as casketed remains. Grave sites in national cemeteries cannot be reserved in advance. Veterans should advise their family of their wishes and where their discharge papers are kept so they may establish burial eligibility. At the time of the veteran's demise, the family would need to make arrangements with the funeral home. There are no VA benefits available to spouses buried in a private cemetery. Burial and plot allowances are flat rate monetary benefits generally paid at the maximum amount authorized by law for an eligible veteran burial and funeral costs. Burial flags can be requested through the VA, and burial flags usually cannot be replaced, but there are some organizations who may be able to help you obtain another flag. Replacement of military awards and decorations. With the exception of the Coast Guard, requests for replacement medals should be directed to the National Personnel Record Center, NPRC. NPRC uses the official military personnel file, OMPF, to verify awards to which a veteran may be entitled. NPRC confirms entitlement to the medals, while the service departments provide shipping. In general, the military services will work replacement medal requests for the veteran at no cost. For the next of kin of deceased veterans, the process and cost for replacement medals differ among the service branches and is dependent upon who is requesting the medal, particularly if the request involves an archival record. OMPFs are accessioned into the National Archives and become archival 62 years after the service member's separation from the military. This is a rolling date. Hence, the current year, 2016, minus 62 years is 1954. The general public may purchase a copy of the Veterans Archival Official Military Personnel File to determine the awards due and obtain medals from a commercial source. If the service member separated after 1954, the public may request such information from the OMPF via the Freedom of Information Act. There are many sources of commercial replacements of military medals. One source is listed on our handout as www.usamilitarymetals.com/collections/purple-heart collection. Photographs of organizational groups. Photographs of military service members may be available from the official military personnel file. You may write to NPRC in St. Louis to request a copy. They may also be interfiled in textual reference series, such as the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, 2008 to present, Department of Defense, Defense Media Activity, Defense Imagery Management Operations Center, http://www.dimoc.mil. The Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps prior to 2008 would be the Special Media Records Division, National Archives of College Park, room 5350, 8601 Adelphi Road, College Park, Maryland, 20740. Their email address is still pix@nara.gov. The Coast Guard, prior to 1962, is the Special Media Records Division, also at the National Archives of College Park, 8601 Adelphi Road, room 5350, College Park, Maryland, 20740. The Coast Guard, 1960 to present, would be at the Personnel Service Center, attention BOPS-C-MR, U.S. Coast Guard, stop 72, 2703 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Southeast, Washington, D.C., 20593. Photographs of military service members may be available from their personnel file. Pre-1960, there is a chance that the photograph is still in their records. However, 1978 and present, those photos are not part of their military personnel file. If the basic training school fort is known, there may be a copy of the basic training graduation book or photo. This book is usually located in the fort's museum. If the yearbook could be found at the museum, a copy of the veterans personal photograph or group photograph could be copied for the veteran or the family member. There is a website provided on the handout where you might be able to find basic training photos. Okay, the next item I will discuss are dog tags. When a soldier first enlists, they are issued dog tags for identification purposes. No branch of the armed forces will reissue new ones. We do get many phone calls and emails asking how people can get dog tags. Shown in this slide is a copy of dog tags that I had made personally. The red one is a medical one for medical emergencies, and the other one talks about, my name, the Army Sergeant, and my blood type. So there is a way that family members can obtain dog tags for themselves or other family members. A good source for that is a place called www.militarydogtags.com, and they may be able to give you a set of dog tags from World War I, II, Korea, and other branches of the service. In the event you find a set of dog tags, please know that they are not the property of the person who's listed on the dog tag or a family member. By law, it actually belongs to the U.S. government. If you find them, you must return them to the Secretary of Defense. If you find them, please write on a piece of paper where you found the tags, the date you found them, your full name and contact information. Put the letter and the dog tags into an envelope and send it to Secretary of Defense at 1400 Defense Pentagon, Washington, D.C., 20301. There are some online military indexes and records, and the websites are listed on the slides and handouts. The Presidential Memorial Certificate is an engraved paper certificate signed by the current president to honor the memory of honorably discharged deceased veterans. Eligible recipients include the next of kin and loved ones of honorably discharged deceased veterans. More than one certificate may be provided. Eligible recipients or someone acting on their behalf may apply for the certificate in person at any VA regional office or by going to their website. In order to order this particular item, you would need a copy of the veteran's DD-214 and their death certificate. In the event that you cannot find the death certificate, they will accept an image of their grave marker. I do have a copy of one to show you. Please hold. My father was in the United States Air Force, and this is a picture of him and the Presidential Memorial Certificate signed by President Barack Obama in honor of him. A variety of records may support the claim process, and to make a successful disability claims or benefits, a wide variety of records may be needed by the veteran or their families. Be sure to check requirements with the Department of Veteran Affairs or any other benefits provider. As mentioned earlier, these providers may be able to seek evidence on your behalf. However, if you're seeking documentation on your own behalf, note that much of what you need may be found in your official military personnel file. These files may be requested from the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis. If you find you need records made for organizational purposes, such as unit records, Many of those documents may be requested from the National Archives or the various service departments. The Department of Veteran Affairs also stores many active duty medical records and other documents needed for the purpose of making claims. Be sure to set aside plenty of time to aggregate resources in order to make the best possible claim, thereby ensuring the best possible outcome. And please, in the event you need to mail military personnel records, please verify the address through the Military Personnel Record Center in St. Louis. Thank you for serving our country. And remember, we at NARA are available year-round to serve you. In the event you have any additional questions, please feel free to send me an email, deborah.poe@nara.gov, subject line, military questions. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Michelle. If anybody in the audience here with us in Washington, D. has a question, please make your way up to a microphone in the aisle there. And while we're waiting for questions to come in, I'm so taken with that presidential certificate. How long did it take you to, once you put in the request, how long did it take for it to arrive at your doorstep?
Well, I was very blessed actually because I originally put the request in, I would say like around October 15th. They were wonderful people because they rushed it for me. But now it might be very difficult to, get President Barack Obama to get it done. And I actually received the paperwork, I would say within a month.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. I also thought I heard somebody mention that we can access Ancestry.com for free in our National Archives buildings. Is that also true for Fold 3, that we can access that for free in the National Archives building?
Yes, we can show you how to access both, because some things are on Ancestry's site and some things are on Fold 3.
Thank you very much. It looks like we have several audience members who have questions.
Yeah, my question is about, one branch I didn't hear mention was the Merchant Marine, and I was wondering about what benefits, any, are available from there, if you know about that.
We don't get many requests for that. It doesn't come up very often, but we can at Archives 2 refer them to the right place. And we do have some Merchant Marine records in terms of like records about the ship activities, and we can help them find some of what they may be looking for if we don't hold it. And I think Michelle can add something.
I believe there's also a DD Form 2158 available that they can use to apply for benefits. That's mostly from World War II. Any other questions?
Well, I have a question in reference to when you're filing for your benefits. Is there a timeline when you submit the last part, or can you always continually put in evidence to support your claim?
Are you asking how long it takes to make a claim through the VA, or how long it takes to obtain documents in support of a claim?
No, if I already have one in, can I keep submitting evidence if I find evidence?
I believe that's a question for the VA, but I'll turn it over to my two colleagues who may know more.
Yes, I'm actually in the middle of resubmitting my claim to up my compensation. Do you have an account through eBenefits through va.gov? Yes. Okay, you can upload additional documents if you find them through that database, and you can check back with them to make sure that they received it, and then you can keep checking the status. And if at some point you feel that you've submitted everything that you need to submit, there is a link on there that you can click and say you would like a decision to be made now. And what will happen, because this happened to me like within the last 3 weeks, they contacted me and gave me an appointment for a reevaluation, which I've gone through. Now I have to wait 30 to 90 days for the decision.
Oh, okay, so you're saying ask them to decide now?
Right, because there's a link in the e-benefits database that says if you no longer wish to continue putting in paperwork or doing research, would you like a decision made now? You click on that, and then they will go ahead and go through the process and then contact you for probably an additional reevaluation, and then we'll let you know the results after they do the additional evaluation.
Okay, and for the thing you had with your father, is that listed on here too?
With the presidential
Right.
certificate?
Is that listed on here?
Oh, yeah, that's in the handout.
Okay, that is, okay.
And that picture I had of him, and all I did was get the frame and put that in there with the certificate, and then you can fix it up with that as well. But what you'll get is you'll get that actual certificate, and you can ask for more than one copy. I asked for up to 5 copies.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions?
I'm not seeing any more questions from our online audience. Are there any more questions from our on-site audience here in Washington, D.C.? Are there any final comments that you would like to make before we conclude today?
There's just one thing I would like to emphasize. If you don't find at first what you're looking for, like the gentleman where the Navy and the NARA could not find the deck logs for his ship, don't give up. If you tell us what you're looking for and what you need it for, we can sometimes point you to other sources. Either we may have them or someone else may have them. So don't be discouraged if the main thing you were looking for you couldn't find. We may be able to point you to other types of records.
Thank you for that tip. That's an amazing amount of work that our presenters have done, and we thank you very much for putting it together. I also want to let the audience know that this presentation will remain online along with the handouts, so you can go back and review this wealth of information they have provided. So on behalf of the National Archives and our presenters, thank you very much for attending today's program. This concludes our presentation.